When I fall, I will rise. When I sit in darkness, the Lord will be a light unto me.
So I did have a conversation with a guy recently, a farmer, and we started talking about, government corruption. What's new, right? I'm almost getting tired of talking about it, Bob. It's like COVID. It's like talking about COVID. But within the farming industry, they were talking about, especially, in Washington State, that you essentially get money for being a no-till farmer. Which the reason for no-till farming is it's part of the green movement. And I kind of did some, not deep research, but I just looked it up.
Yeah.
And it looks like it minimizes wind and water erosion. So it holds carbon into the ground better. Obviously, there's less machinery use, so we're putting out less emissions. But that's about it. And the bad thing is that if you're not tilling your land and you have weeds, it just means we just spray everything with chemicals. So that's got to have a great effect on the environment, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's interesting.
But it's changed. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the only aspect of it that I've heard of prior to this was no-till drill as a way of planting. That's how we did a big section of our pasture. We added, aside from the normal grasses that we're growing for hay, we added a bunch of other things into the soil, like rye and clover, because the previous farm had been doing things a certain way for a lot of years, and so it led to a buildup of certain nutrients in the soil. So the clover and stuff like that in this special seed mix was designed to break down certain aspects of the soil better than they had been doing with just the one grass blend that was in there, right? And this no-till drill is a method of planting onto a pasture that's already producing without disrupting the germination or production of the plants that are already there. So we're able to kind of just add a seed mixture to a crop that's already there versus tilling up the whole thing and kind of, just like churning it all up and starting from scratch again. So that was the first time I'd ever heard of it prior to this conversation. And so I can see certain benefits to it, but I also see how in the long-term big picture of a farm, especially, and this may sound counterintuitive to say that in order to lean towards being as natural as possible, you need to like rip up the ground every once in a while. But I truly believe that you kind of do need to do that every once in a while. There's a lot of life that happens in your soil, right? There's all kinds of biodiversity and bacteria and these things growing in the dirt. Worms, moles, bugs, bacteria, everything. It's a whole ecosystem. And over time, when you pull up that deep soil that's, a foot deep or whatever, when you do a real good till and bring up that stuff, you're bringing in that new life to the top area and keeping that ecosystem healthy is my understanding of it.
Yeah, that raises a good point. Absolutely. The problem is the government has intervened. And so everything's gone shady. Right? So if you are a no-till farmer, you make your money. It seems like to me. You make your money.
Okay.
no matter what. But also, you yield less crop. So you're making your guaranteed money, but even on the good years, it's not a great year. You know what I mean? So if you are a till or a traditional farmer and it's a good year, it's going to be a great year because you have thicker bushels. So it's interesting because you can't really get ahead. If you think of like a farming as a business, say you're a small farmer, you can't really get ahead or advance your farm because you are dependent on this check to make it. And even on a good year, you're not really getting ahead for the bad years. And on the bad years, you're not losing, you're just maintaining. So essentially, you're looks like a 9-to-5 job on a salary.
But why does that matter when you know you'll be able to depend on the government next year, right? Who needs to get ahead when we just trust Big Daddy Uncle Sam to take care of us?
Exactly. And I had the farmer say, at that point, you're not even farming. Half the battle of farming is we got to do great on good years. We got to ride the market. When the market's good, we have a good year of crop. We nail it. We get ahead. And on the bad years, well, you weather the storm and you live broke. That's kind of like you got to ride the wave, man. The same thing with fishing. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, it's just like the fishing industry, you know, or the cattle industry or any industry.
Real estate.
But yeah, yeah. So it's like you're taking the risk out of farming, but also if you're yielding less crop, we're not being most efficient with our resources. And I'm speaking out my butt here. I'm making a link to, well, who's buying all of this land from the farmers that can't afford it no more, that eventually took more losses than they did winning, and they have to end up selling their farm because inflation's going up. You know, large companies buy them up. And a lot of times it's China. That's the scary part. A lot of times it's China. Is they'll buy all these little farms and then they have this big plot, and it's like this is not even Americans owning the soil. It's not even us. So it's like, oh, is this a push to get rid of all small farms? Is this what we're trying to do? Is that the end goal? Is to have it all owned by the government or owned by whatever? So that's I don't know. I see a lot of shade in there.
Yeah, it's a good perspective to have, I think. In this kind of boils down to, like we were just talking about a little bit ago, creating dependency is really just a form of control, right? I can't tell you how many people have told me that I need to get disability from being a veteran. And, you know, and it's like, oh, you would totally qualify. Oh, you deployed, you did whatever, you did this. You're entitled, you earned it. You know, yeah. Okay, maybe all that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't care. What I can tell you is that I have to be borderline going into the ground or not able to provide for my family before I'm willing to accept a handout from somebody. Whether or not my service qualifies me for it or I earned it, doesn't matter. It's a mentality or an ideology that I refuse to adopt. You know what I mean? And that's, I'm
absolutely.
pretty...
And I think that's I don't think you can go wrong with a hungry, you know, philosophy of life. But just
to me, that's giving up
taking
your
that,
independence.
and I get like it's kind of like the pharmaceutical industry, right? It's made for certain people, There's a reason for it, but it's overprescribed, right? You may have, like you said, you may have earned it, but you're not the person it's made for.
Great analogy.
You're not. You're meant for the guy that got his leg blown off, or the guy that got PTSD so bad that, I mean, he can't walk out. He can't hear the rake hit the ground without having flashbacks. You know what I mean? Like, it's not made for you.
Right.
And a lot of people, this kind of leads into the conversation we had about the generation leaning towards soft. You know, it's like, this seems worse than it is. Like, you think you have it bad, but you really don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's
To me,
I think that's a good mentality to have. Is
yeah, you know, people always call the wokeness a mind virus, right? The woke mind virus.
Yeah.
I feel like dependency is just as much of a infection that can take place in you slowly over time. You can just get used to things, and I don't know. I feel like a little bit of a standout or whatever, statistically speaking, anyways, for just having this natural aversion to it. I don't know. It's just instinctually, alarm bells start going off the second somebody tries to give me something for free.
well, I mean, it's definitely an old school way of thinking, right? You're thinking all the old guys, they won't even go to the doctor unless they're can't walk or puking up blood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's a mindset.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it might be a bit extreme, but I think, I mean, that's something that we should adopt, right? Not everything has to change. You can't rule out all the experience, like, from the future or the previous generations. Why don't we pull this out and be like, okay, why are they doing this? Oh, well, it's because it makes them tough, and it's a mentality, and they're hungry, and they want to strive to be successful. They want to produce for their family. They want to produce for their country. It's like nobody want handouts. And I think that, at least I know, like, my parents kind of raised me that way. It's like, we're not taking handouts from nobody. We can make it on our own. We don't need you.
Your parents are
right. And even if I do take something from somebody, no, continue on.
Well, they're a prime example of, like, produce and produce and produce, and so you can help other people too. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I feel like they're such a great example, because with the way that they interact with people around them and stuff like that, there would almost never be a need for Big Daddy government to step in and take care of anybody, because at the community level and at the friendship level, they're handling their own business. But obviously life happens sometimes. Sometimes you get sick or you get busy or whatever, but there's people around you that will step in and help out. And they're a prime example of that. I can't think of anybody who's a better example of, like, helping out their neighbor. You know what I mean? Where the neighbor doesn't even need.
I mean, I think that our community is so, or your community, that's not mine anymore, but your community is so like that. Like, if Dad is on a trip to the east side or on a vacation or something, everybody in the area, when they drive by, Tom and Bonnie's farm, they're looking to see where their cows are at. They're checking on the horses.
Yep.
They're not even thinking about it. They just do it because that's how tight that community is. That's how tight their friends are. That's how, even when they're home, right? I mean, Mom's gotten calls that, hey, your horse is out. And I mean, there's 4 people there helping her in the middle of the day. It's like, they care that much. That's why when I went to Missouri, I was so homesick a lot is because I missed that sense of security and everybody around you, that like you're never gonna flop because they're gonna pick you up, you
Yeah.
know. And most of the time, like they're not trying to accept handouts either, but
Right.
the community will just do it. You know, they're not giving you money or whatever. They're just checking on the stuff when you're gone. You don't even got to ask. They just do it,
Yep.
which is definitely didn't happen in the college scenario. I can tell you that much. Don't know what it's like in every other place of the world, but
Right.
I hope that becomes more common.
Yeah. I can't attest to whether it will or it won't, but I think society would benefit greatly from it becoming the norm again. And I also kind of think that as much as people always say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So as much as relying on the federal government in mass as a country is kind of like a byproduct of a sickness in our mind or our brain that tells us we don't need to be resilient, independent, diligent, hardworking, autonomous people who stand on our own 2 feet no matter what. I also think that getting rid of government will have the natural effect of our society leaning more into things like this. You know what I mean? As kind of a result of that.
I think that's a long-term way of thinking. You know,
Yeah.
it's gonna create instant hardship, and people are gonna hate it. And in 10 years, the whole country is gonna change for the better. But it's gonna be a hard 10 years. That's a hard sales pitch to have, Bob.
Yeah, but tell me.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, but tell me a situation where everybody's better off that did not require some hard stuff up front. You know what I mean?
Oh, that cut out. What'd you say?
Well, I just said, name for me a situation in which everybody's better off that didn't require some hard decisions, some hard work, and some hard times up front, right?
Mm-hmm. And you think about this in small scale. It's like building a relationship, right? If you do something or go through something hard with somebody, and once you break through, how strong is that bond you have with that person?
Yeah.
It's so much stronger than if you guys just walked on rainbows for years and, you know,
Yep.
you're not really doing anything hard together, working where you have to think and bounce ideas off each other and synergize like that. That's creates such a strong bond, and if you bring that out to a community level, you have a very powerful tool.
Yeah. Yep. That's a classic example too, of just like the old timey way of thinking and responding to life. It's like the farmer says, there's good years and there's bad years, and you rely on the community and your help around you during the bad times, and it creates this bond that, I mean, you could always look back and analyze things with hindsight being 2020 and kind of say, well, COVID and all of that kind of stuff was an intentional breakdown of that bond, right? Of the community structure and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely of the governmental bond, you know, like it completely eliminated all trust of the whole country.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's for sure. That's for sure.
It made it clear that you are not out for my best interest, which is it's for me, it's depressing to think about, because I grew up in this, so I never got to see a good time. So I hope that in the next 20 years that I get to experience a time where I can trust the government.
Yeah,
I just hope they didn't ruin my core.
I hear you there. I'm kind of in in a similar spot, but I've always been like, it didn't really faze me much because I'm just like, I don't know. I was born a little bit of distrust for the government in me or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that might have been God just speaking to you, because now we're here. Now it's like, oh, I was right. They have been lying to us. Maybe they've been lying to us for longer than we even know. That's like, well, how long has this really been going on? Oof.
Well, that's a big old rabbit hole. I mean, you could argue, in my opinion, that this election that we just had was the first memorandum of the people, or actual representation of the people's will since Kennedy was killed.
Tell me a little more. I'm not informed on this.
Well, think about, so Kennedy was assassinated, right? He was the, I don't know if beloved is the right word, but he was the president that the people of America wanted. And the bureaucracy or establishment, or the blob, as they are calling it nowadays, thanks to Mike Benz, didn't want him because he wasn't going to fuel the war machine and make billions of dollars for all of them, right? So he disappeared right in front of everybody. And and there was so much easier ability or control over information back then, right? Like, you had the news, and that's where people got all of their information from. There was no Google. There was no huge databases or archives on the internet that you could sift through and figure out the truth on. You know what I mean? You had what the government told you in the official narrative back then, and that's what you had to go off of. It takes decades and decades to actually begin to unravel things fully. And now that we have the access to information that we do, and we shall see too in the near future if actual facts and information gets released about Kennedy's assassination in the next couple of days. I think that's supposed to happen.
In the next couple of days?
Yeah, that's what my understanding of the situation is that they're working really hard on releasing stuff about Kennedy, the UAP program, Jeffrey Epstein, all these kinds of things that the Trump administration, I think their intention is to kind of try and rebuild the trust that the American people have in the government. So they're going to kind of try and go through this big disclosure process on these things, like just key societal issues.
So what is the negative effect of putting this information out there? How does it hurt the country? What's the argument?
Well, I think previously it was, we keep things secret for national security, right? Like, we don't either trust the American people to handle the truth. Like, let's say, case example, aliens are real, right? You just tell the whole world that, people might freak out. It would be my assessment of why they've kept things classified for so long.
So if we're under the hypothetical of aliens being real, I mean, if you did and the world freaked out, what does a world freak out look like? What would you really do differently? And what would that effect be? I mean, I guess maybe it's the unknown. This comes back to security, and the conservative view of things, of the unknown, is kind of scary.
Yeah, and
we're facing.
And in my opinion, that argument only holds water kind of right when something happens. Like when, the second it goes down, that could have a little weight behind it. But as time goes on, like, if you can't, I don't know. And my perspective screams like, if we're not a society of citizens that can handle the truth, what's the point, anyways? You know what I mean? Like, we're all grown ups, and we need to be able to perform like grown ups and handle the truth. That's my thoughts on it, anyways.
I'm gonna 100% switch this conversation right here. That again, to me, it circles back to the government, because think about the education system. If we are sending kids through the education system and they're not prepared to handle the truth, what the hell have we been doing?
Yeah.
If we can't even raise a kid through our federal education system, and I'm talking universities too, like the people that are the thought creators of the world, these PhD holders and whatnot, if they can't even handle the truth to tell everybody, I mean, what are we doing?
Dude, this is something I struggle with all the time.
Now you're going to get me fired up, Bob.
Yeah, well, this is something I struggle with all the time, because my two closest examples of teachers are you and Morgan. And you two are some of the greatest human beings I've ever met, and some of the greatest teachers that I've ever encountered. So I really struggle personally with this, because I don't think the federal government has been doing a good job, to the point that I think the intention of the school system for decades has not been to create the strongest, smartest Americans possible. It has been to create people that will do what we're told and pay taxes, right? That's my interpretation of what the entire system is designed to produce. Docile, obedient taxpayers, right? And that, to me, is not the definition of a strong citizen.
And I've heard this argument like 100 times, that the education system was kind of centered around the industrial revolution. And
factory workers.
We created like factory workers is what we created. Well, that's not what the world needs anymore. So let's make a shift here. But also, it doesn't matter how good of a teacher you are. I got to follow the rules of the state. I'm going to give an example. I'm going to give you an example, Bob. I have an inability to touch a kid under any situation possible. So I walk into a fight. Okay. One kid beating the crap out of another kid. I cannot do anything. The only thing I can do is stand in between them and take the punches. That's the extent of what I can do.
Okay. And let's look at how rapid of a societal shift that was from the one generation above us, right? Like, you look at our parents' generation, and they were still polite society when they interacted with people, but you could still get punched in the face in public for being an idiot, right? Like, you think about your dad's generation when he was growing up, or my dad's generation when they were growing up. If they go in the grocery store, start causing some kind of big scene, and they're an adult male, another adult male in that grocery store is going to walk up to him and put him down, right? Like, punch him in the face or knock him out. Like,
yeah, put him in his place, detain him, whatever.
Exactly. So from just that to today, now you can't do anything besides stand in between them and take the punches. I mean, tell me that that's not an overreach in general.
Let me even give you a better one. We're looking at behavior plans for a kid coming up in the junior high, and our solution at the moment is, when he has his freakouts and he gets physical, evacuate everyone out of the classroom and let him just destroy. I mean, it throws computers, rips desks apart. What we're supposed to do, take everyone out of the classroom and let him do his thing. This is incredibly frustrating. And I'm at a loss for words for what
I can't imagine. Well,
I mean, in my classroom, I have a ton of personal stuff. It's even I don't know.
yeah, it's
That's
tough.
There's no accountability anywhere. You can't even send a kid out of the classroom.
Right.
So we're letting you can, and the thing is you're in school for 7.5, 8 hours every single day. That's that's a third of your day. And if you're able to pretty much do whatever you want with no consequences for 8 hours a day, I mean, what does that tell you? What does that instill in you?
Yeah,
I
and
think there needs to be some major reforms.
yeah, and I finally have the hope or see the opportunity for major reforms in our society. So naturally, not being a super optimistic person, that should give you a little hope, because normally I'm the pessimist in the room, and I actually see the opportunity for some change for the better here. My biggest concern though is that you take the big picture of a human being, and while, like we talked about earlier, sacrificing your 20s, their 20s are a critical time in a human being's life for them to achieve certain things and set certain benchmarks and build certain foundations for the rest of their life, right? Well, what's before that? Okay, that's 10 to 20 years old. And I would argue that's probably the most critical stage in a human being's life, right? That's where you are forming your entire framework of how you're going to analyze the rest of your life from. You are learning discipline, work ethic, rules, all these things that, and granted, when we talk about how the federal government has botched or not executed well the school system, I place half of the onus of that on the American people for outsourcing the development of the child to the federal government, because instinctually that's something I just can't get behind. You know what I mean? That's one of the main reasons why I struggle with this all the time. It's like, you and Morgan are such great people and great teachers, and it's like, it's hard for me to not support a big school system like that when you guys are both part of it. And I know my child would benefit from having you guys in their life, right? So that's why I struggle so hard with it. But at the mass scale, it ain't working out.
Yeah. And if we're talking about like support, it's best to support your school. And that's like student centered or like events. Like at basketball games, that money goes to the students, to the athletic programs. That's stuff that's not gonna be entangled with the federal government. But
Funny you mentioned that. We
I don't know.
went to every well, I don't know if it was every, but we hit all of the district games this week. Like, it was obviously, it was a stretch. Like, it's tough. We got a new baby. We work all day, and then it's like we're dragging this little baby to these basketball games every evening, not getting home till 9:30 at night. Like, but we feel like the school is an important aspect of the community because it's where all the community's children are. So we can't just not support it. You have to participate in those things and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I worry, I don't know, like district wise, I don't know where that money goes.
Oh, maybe that gets routed straight up. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't, because it might be hosted at a certain school, but I don't think they see it. That goes to the WIA, which is, yes, it ain't good either.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I think you got to support your community and your kids.
Yeah.
So that's,
I do too.
and that also builds trust with the people around you, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we kind of went off the rails of no-till farming, but
Yeah,
what's
wow.
new?
Isn't that fascinating what we start talking about and what we end up talking about?
Yeah, you ended up getting my educational rant. Yeah, but I don't know. I love the way conversations flow, and honestly, I think this is where my fascination with podcasting kind of stemmed from. Is that I even remember at age 8 or 10 that my best friend Brooke Fries, that's something that we would talk about. We would talk about the flow of conversations, and it's like falling into rabbit holes. I remember talking about that with her multiple times as a young child, and it's just like fascinating. We started here and we ended here. That was a long road.
Yep.
But
a beautiful journey. The one thing I would say, though, going back to...
I think that's going to...
Go ahead.
Oh, gosh, did you cut out?
Can you hear me?
No, going back to what?
Well, the only thing I was going to say is going back to the no-till farming. I would encourage you or anyone, if they were more interested in farming, to look up the Joel Salatin, or it's Will something with White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures is a farm that does things pretty darn natural, and they're pretty efficient, pretty effective, and they take into account a lot of things like carbon sequestration, all that kind of stuff, while also striving to keep the actual, the cow, the chicken, the pig, all the animals on the farm, their whole life being as free and as healthy as possible. Also taking into account the environment, the water, the soil, the trees, all of it. Like, it's a really good whole picture of a farm and how it can operate healthy for the animals, healthy for the humans, and healthy for the land. The obvious downside is that you may not get as much production of any particular entity or crop out of a holistic pictured farm like that, like massive agricultural farming of just one crop, monocrop agriculture, they call it, on huge swaths of land is obviously going to give you the best yield of that individual thing. But if you zoom out a little bit and you try to look at the whole picture for a small group of humans, maybe the more holistic overall farm picture of animals and plants and all that stuff working together is better, but you may not be able to feed billions of people with it.
Yeah. Or do you make enough to feed your family and get ahead? That's the only other question. Is there enough community support that they are going to buy local and natural? Do they care enough? Does your community care enough? That's the question. I would have with that. The only scarcity.
That's a really good question, because strictly speaking, farms like that have supported communities in our country, all across our country, for decades, right? Decades of our American history were supported with farms like that. And it is the concentration of tens of millions of people in a large city that all of their food has to be trucked into and stuff like that. I mean, that's where it starts to be a little less naturally sustainable.
Right. And I feel like I've had this conversation before too, but our land is becoming very, very valuable, right? Because we're building our cities, and their cities they're expanding, so that land that we do have to farm with, it's almost needed to produce enough food for the cities. it becomes a slight problem
Right.
for the world as a whole.
Yeah, no kidding.
'Cause
That
we're
was just
so
what I wanted to
condensed.
wrap up on the no-till farming. They've got a lot of YouTube videos and stuff, that White Oak Pastures, and they're pretty interesting. They kind of break down how they run things, and it seems to me to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, let's wrap this up. I'm about ready for some breakfast. What do you think?
Yeah, I got a home inspection I got to run too.
Alrighty. Well, we'll have a good week.
Okay, sounds good. You too, bud. We'll see you next time. Love ya.
Yep, roger that, love.
Thank you for listening. To support the show, like, comment, subscribe, and follow on Facebook and Instagram at the Walk of Life Podcast. Episodes come out every Tuesday at 6 a.m. We'll see you next time.